How about now? Much better. Okay. Thank you, Barry and Seth. Again, we'd like to welcome everyone out. Thank you for participating in the pledge. Our first item today, always a good item when we have the chance. We have presentation of Carbon County Employee of the Month, Rose Barnes.
Commissioners, we actually have two presentations this month because last month Cletus was not able to attend for a family emergency. So I'm going to take a minute and let the sheriff speak about Cletus, and I just want to say I love working with him. He is just an amazing friend and colleague, and thank you. He just is so efficient, and it's nice to have that for me and my department, so I appreciate you, Cletus, very much. Thank you.
You know, this is a deserving award for Cletus. It's amazing what he gets done in a day, and Rose said it well. He's very efficient in everything he does. Cletus is one of those guys that if you ask him to do something, it's done. You don't have to think twice about it. So it's great to have him. He's crucial to the day-to-day operations of the sheriff's office. He's a dang good friend and well deserving of this award. So I'd like to present this to Cletus. Thank you.
You're going to speak now, aren't you, Cletus?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks for the opportunity to work for Carbon County Sheriff Wood and the Carbon County Sheriff's Office. In 19 years of law enforcement, I've had some really great jobs. I've loved every day, but this by far is the best position I've ever had. I love coming to work every day. I love serving the people of Carbon County, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cletus.
And Commissioners, our next Employee of the Month for the month of June is Patty Pine. Patty is our one of our janitors here in the building, and Julie Croco nominated her, and I'm going to ask Chris to come up. But Julie's home sick; she lost her voice, so she's not going to be in attendance. But I'm going to read a statement that she sent about Patty, and I thought it was really it spoke highly of Patty. Patty Pine is an excellent candidate for the Employee of the Month. Patty is our janitor in this area as well as in many other areas. She arrives punctually at the same time every workday as to not startle anyone and is ready to clean. She is constantly on the move from the time she enters the office to the time she leaves. She is committed through her daily routine, careful not to disrupt any phone calls or meetings. And, you know, that's hard because our janitors come in and out, and both she and Chad do that very, very well. She has ensured to maintain the beauty of this area and keep the newness. Defendants have seen her and asked her to help them at the window since she can speak Spanish, which helps to lessen frustration and communication error. The winter there was a lot of mud in the parking lot. I myself have stained shoes, unable to avoid the stuff everywhere. She made sure to make this safe environment by continually mopping up the wet in the mud that was being dragged in on or the floor. I'm reading exactly as she's got written, so I apologize, would have looked similar to the parking lot in one day. On Friday, she's in the courtroom wiping everything down, door handles, floorboards, armrests, cleaning the window that people tend to spit on as they walk, and etc., aware of maintaining a healthy environment. Her work is invisible to those who don't see the messes, which she usually pays attention to first. She continues to diligently work throughout the day, keeping the courthouse in top shape, even when unexpected duties come along. She is very helpful, friendly, and great to have her in our department. I believe she should be recognized for her hard work, her stamina, and all that she has contributed to helping this building and other employees. She really appreciates Patty. So Patty, come on up. I'll let you talk for a minute too, Chris.
Okay, yeah, we want to present this to Patty, and we're kind of excited that she's the Employee of the Month this month, and she does a really good job. She is punctual. She's always, every time I come into the building, she's always busy. She keeps herself occupied and cleaning the building, and I think our building's been clean and presentable to the public as well as the people that work here, and so we really appreciate the service that she's provided for us.
Thank you. And she always wears a smile every time I've seen her. She's always got a smile on her face. Thanks, Patty.
Thank you, Patty.
Thank you, Patty. Alexis Horsley, would you please come to the mic? Would you tell us how many years you've been with Carbon County?
I don't know where to start. I worked here in high school.
Oh, my goodness.
My time at Carbon County spans probably 50 years.
50
I
years,
worked
wow.
here summers in high school, college. I had a year and a half of full-time work before I was married. Had kids for about 10 years, and then I came back to work for Carbon County in 1987, which that point counts my 30 years.
Oh, very good. Well, it's a sad day, but I guess happy in a way, that we get the opportunity to present you with this retirement plaque.
Thank you very much. I would like to say that I have worked for 5 county clerks. I worked for Brigham H. Young, if you know him, if you remember him, Hector Chiara, Norman Pritchard, Robert Pirro, and Seth Ovison. And I've learned something from each one of them. I've so enjoyed being a public servant. Carbon County's been good to me, and I will never forget you guys.
We won't forget you either. It's definitely not every day you have an employee stick with you 50 years. It's a pillar of your department, Seth.
She should have said she's put up with 5 county clerks over the last several years.
Yes. Item number 4 on the agenda, we have consideration and possible...
Number 3.
You're correct. Thank you. We have approval of minutes. The first set of minutes that we have, minutes of work meeting of Board of Commissioners for the date of March 29th. Commissioners, did you have any corrections to be made there?
I saw no corrections. I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. The next set of minutes are for the commission meeting dated Wednesday, April 5th.
I didn't have any changes in that one. I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Our third set of minutes is for the commission meeting held May 1st, Monday, May 1st.
I saw no corrections.
And
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Our last set of minutes for the special meeting held May 25th.
If they could all be this length, that would be
If they
great.
could all be one-pagers, right?
One pagers. I saw no changes. I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Lori and Seth, for those minutes. Item number 4, we have consideration and possible approval of a conditional use permit for Basin Industries for an existing metal salvage yard located at 510 East, 1250 South, parcel 02-1643 and 02-1641-4. Todd, would you like to come and talk to us about this?
So from last meeting, the commissioners, you guys asked me to provide additional information on the location of the scales, if there was anything located in their deed for the right for their scales to be there, if there's anything, any other agreements previously made. I didn't find any information of agreements previously made, so it's still left up to the commissioners to determine whether that's allowed, if there's any conditions, or if those scales have to be removed. So I know we've had some conversations on the best way to move forward with that. And Scott, he was here last night for planning commission meeting, and he was going to try to make it today, the owner of Basin Industries. So I don't know if he'll be here or not, but was there any other questions you guys had for me?
Todd, if I could just point out,
Yeah.
As I reviewed the material you sent, it looked like there was a building permit that was requested, but it did not seem to mention the scales in it, so it's impossible to tell when the original scales were put in, correct? Based on the documents we have at this point.
Correct.
So there was a building permit for the building, but it
Yes.
didn't mention the scales. I think Mr. Bingham thought it would, but it didn't. Commissioners, also, I think you've been presented with some evidence showing that, some pictures showing where exactly in relation to the road, into the paved road, where in relation to the paved road as it exists on the ground, where those scales sit. And so those scales are within what we typically claim as the road right-of-way, which is 66 feet, although whether that actual right-of-way width would be the amount that that a court would find we own, because it's a prescriptive right-of-way, is not 100% clear. Under Utah law, that's a reasonable width is the language it uses, and then case law says that that reasonable width is based on actual and historic use of the road. So although we typically assert 66 feet for our rights-of-way in areas such as this, a court would say, well, what have you actually used? What's reasonable and necessary given your historic use of the road? So I just wanted to point out to you that although it does appear those scales would be within that 66-foot width, it's not 100% clear that a court would find that to be the actual width of the road. So I want you to be aware of that as you make your decision tonight. Also, I would point out that the public hearing was held previously at the last meeting on this matter.
Correct. Just to add to recalling information from when we first discussed this, the original scales that were there and then the replacement scales that were put in were substantially larger in size and encroached further into the road. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the original scales were approximately 30 feet, and the scales that are there are approximately 100 feet. So some of the concerns are, those trucks come in and accessing the highway, coming onto the scales, and then after they've been weighed, going down in the property, being unloaded, and then coming back and re-weighing their empty weight, and then coming back across the road. So those scales are closer to the edge of the pavement now than they were a few years ago.
And part of the concern, as you recall, was number one, trucks possibly being backed up into the roadway. Well, if there's more than one truck that's being weighed or about to be weighed, that it looks like, based on the configuration of the road, that a truck may end up waiting there on that roadway. Now, it's a 25-mile-an-hour road, but there was some concern as to if we've got multiple trucks lined up, it's likely those trucks will be in the actual travel way as it exists now. The other concern is that after trucks have weighed and come back around and come back off the scales in the other direction, as they leave the scales, they have to cross the roadway, and not at a right angle, but at a they have to veer across the oncoming traffic lane to get there. So that looked like it could be a concern as well. So those were kind of the actual concerns with the configuration and placement of the scales, regardless of whether or not they actually are in the roadway or not.
So the safety concerns is what we're trying to overcome on whether or not we decide to allow for a conditional use permit at this time. I was just also wanting to point out that, I mean, typically if a business is making a change of footprint of over 3 times what it currently or previously had, typically they would contact the county or whoever is maintaining the road, or Questar or the power company, or you know, typical things of that nature. And to your knowledge, was any of that previously done, Todd?
Not that I'm aware of. There was nothing documented, and that's one thing that we want to work with businesses on, is anytime they encroach on the right-of-way, the county right-of-ways, to get an encroachment permit, contact the road department or the building and planning department, say, hey, this is what we're looking to do, what needs to be done, so we can help them make sure, hey, this is the best location for where you want to put that, so that we're aware of and it's done properly, and then we have the documentation recorded, so if there's any questions, we have the documentation in their file that says, yes, this was allowed and this how it was approved moving forward. And I don't know if any of that there was no documentation of that done for the original scales, and then when he increased the size, there was no contact made.
Very good.
And he talked about that when he was here, that, you know, realizing in hindsight that there was more to it than just changing out an existing facility, so.
Yeah.
Some of the other questions that we had asked that be addressed in making the decision, and you've provided some of those, was some concerns brought up by particularly Mr. Jones in regards to the water line and if there was a leak there. Do you want to talk about where the utilities are as far as that goes?
Yes, so the water line is not located under the scales. We had Prywide go out and mark it, and so that is off to the side of the scale. It doesn't go underneath the scales, so there's no issues with the scales being on top of that water line. The power...
You'd mentioned to me that that water line's about 6 feet away.
Yeah, approximately 6 feet away. So the power lines are above ground. There wasn't any other utilities in there. We called 811. The only thing that they were aware of was the water line, so that's why we contacted Prywide to have them go mark it so we can see the location of that.
The other thing that was brought up with Mr. Jones, and I tried to address as many questions as we could, was that the property closest to his hadn't been used for, you know, until Basin had moved in. And while that appears to be true from some of the imagery that we have, there was some storage going on into the top end of that parcel, but down along the property line and so forth, that, you know, has expanded over time. And I think that that's probably part of the reason that the fencing and some of those things are required in those permits, both from a county and a state point of view. So I think that, you know, it is a good point that that Mr. Jones did bring up, and part of that will have to be addressed by, you know, fencing going on. The other thing that spent some time, my own personal research, and then talking with Christian in regards to that prescriptive easement. And even though it was indicated that in 1990 that the deed was given to the county for the right-of-way, I don't know, again, because we don't have those documentations, but the way that it was surveyed now, if that was the case, then we have a corner of the existing building that was giving a building permit back in '88. We have a fence, we have a power pole, we have any number of things that are already intruding into that right-of-way, including those scales. And so it becomes a concern to me that that would ever, again, hold up in court if we said, hey, you've got to move these things because of this easement prescriptively. I'm not sure that, you know, we would have a leg to stand on, because the asphalt is a certain width. And we have space obviously on both sides of that that is not being used. So that was the one big concern that I had is, okay, if there is an easement there and all of a sudden we exercise it, are we going to cut off a corner of a building? Are we going to tear down a fence? You know, obviously that's not the business that we're in Carbon County to try and take care of that. It was wrong for them to put the scales in like they did without going through that process, but I think that over all the years of the existing business that there's some issues with our easement and some issues with what has happened in the development of that building.
Yep.
And so forth over the years. So it makes it very difficult in answering all of those questions, of which, you know, I don't know that there's a right or a wrong answer to any of those at this point other than what the research has shown. So.
And I think that's one thing, like you said, Commissioner, is with the building there, you know, from our point, you know, in 1988, and maybe we should have asked them to make sure it wasn't in the right of way. That wasn't done, so I think that's something that, you know, is on ours. But just
And
moving
that
forward,
that series of dates, yes, going forward, but series of dates was the building was built in '88 and the easement was given in '90. You know, so it's a little late to have a building moved if we're going to take that prescriptive easement there. But I think part of the solution in my eyes, Commissioners, and I'd be happy to make a motion to this, is that I think that my motion would be to approve the conditional use permit based upon Basin Industries providing us with some type of a transportation mediation type plan, and we could set that even over the next 90 days in my motion, because I think there are ways to use that. For example, could there be some type of an approach where they're already leaving the asphalt to come on, but some type of an approach that would address the truck stacking up, or a staging area that could be done? Could it be handled after the trucks are weighed out, after they're unloaded, with somebody going out and flagging the traffic, one of his employees, so the traffic stops while it's on? A series of flashing lights on each end of it that notifies trucks entering the highway when they are coming on and off, so that there's plenty of distance before you get actually to there. There's the automated stop and go signals without putting a lot of infrastructure in that could help regulate traffic. And so I really believe that they could come back with a proposal to help us, you know, mitigate the possible traffic issues that could be there. And also that just if we, in that same motion, that just because we may agree to that now, if development happened in that area and the traffic changed and there was significant issues, we may have to come back to them and say, now you do need to move your scales.
Yeah.
But that would be my motion.
Just for clarification on that motion, you would be approving the conditional use permit based on those 15 recommendations provided to us by the Planning Commission, with the adjustment of that one to relocate the scales.
Yes.
Well, there would be the addition, the mitigation, the traffic mitigation plan, and also an understanding that if we do need that right of way at some point in the future, it in no way says that we don't have right. We can kick them off if we need to, basically.
So providing them a conditional use that is very conditional, based on our future preference.
Sure, subject to the county utilizing its claim of right-of-way. So we do continue to assert we've got a 66-foot right-of-way there, and we reserve the right to exercise it and claim it and use it fully
Now,
at
Commissioner,
some point in the future if we
Should
need
that
to.
time come, yes.
Right.
If development pushes it to that point.
But my understanding, though, with respect to the traffic mitigation plan, is that they would bring a proposal for approval to you within the next 90 days. That's part of the motion as well.
Correct.
yeah, all right, that was the other thing I was going to clarify.
Are they going to implement that as well, as long as it's approved?
I think it would need to be approved, and then we'd need to set a date for implementation based on what they bring back.
So is it going to be 90 days in your motion?
Yes, that's what I motioned.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Not in this meeting. The public period was previous. And go ahead and record that I voted against that one. So 2 votes for, 1 vote against. I feel that we're putting additional work on the Planning and Zoning Commission and Todd by requiring these additional measures that may or may not be met in the future. But that's my view. Any further discussion?
You know, to rebuttal that, Commissioner, there may have been a lot of work going into this, but you also have a business there, and you do have neighbors that need to be protected. But what is the traffic count and the volume that is there has not increased significantly over this time frame. And so I'm sorry that it ever got to this point where it had to be, but basically to clean up our records, and I hope that you'll work diligently to do that.
Yep.
But in all fairness, I think that we have considered all those requirements that will protect the landowners and allow business to operate.
And we definitely want to be pro-business here in Carbon County, and we are, just as the previous meeting that was held at 2 o'clock today. We're trying to do everything we can to get businesses here in the area. However, my stance is not in opposition to Basin Industries operating in their current location, other than just the means by which they're currently doing it and have been going about doing it, I feel could be done in different ways. But we have 2 motions for and 1 against.
Thank you.
Item number 5 on the agenda. We have Michelle Goldsmith. Please come to the mic and tell us how we can improve our communication with the community.
All right. And this kind of just came to the forefront when you guys had your land use document, and it was a journey for me. So
Are you referring to the resource management plan that came before the?
150-page document that there was like a planning and zoning meeting for public?
Yes, that
input?
you and I spoke about after that meeting.
Right.
So it didn't come before this body yet, but it came before the Planning Commission.
Right.
Okay.
So, but I'm here about communication, not about that
Okay.
document. Okay. So anyway, and as far as communication, I had a problem finding the document. I, had no problem reading through it. And at that planning and zoning meeting that we were talking about, there was maybe 4 or 5 people here. And about a week later, or a couple weeks later, I was asked to be at that planning and zoning meeting. Somebody sent me an email. And then a couple weeks later, somebody requested I go to the planning and zoning meeting in Helper, and they had 30 people there. So I'm looking at that, and then I look at here, and you look here, and there's not a lot of people here at this meeting. And I go to the city council meetings in Helper from time to time, and they have anywhere from 15 to 30 people average at those meetings. And so my concern is, like, on this document, I think you guys said that there was something like 30 people that responded to the survey and a few more emailed. And so there was maybe, and I thought if I doubled it and was generous, there was maybe 100 people that had input on this. And when I was reading through the document, it was saying, Carbon County, Carbon County, Carbon County. And I'm thinking, well, if only 100 people had input with that, that's like 5,000ths of the county that actually had something to say or said something about that. And so then, as I'm going through more things, and I'm looking, and I'm the communications person and helper for our revitalization, so it's kind of coming to the forefront. So a couple weeks ago, I get this email, and Eric McCauley's coming and speaking about his water, not revitalization, but the restoration that they're doing along the Price River. And he wanted to come and talk to the people of Helper. And there was grumbling because it was short notice. It was only 2 days' notice. It was in the middle of the afternoon, so most people were at work. But still, there were like 15 people that were there. This is like in the afternoon, and you don't have a whole lot of people here. And then I started thinking more, and it was like, how much back and forth is there between like Price City Government, Wellington, Helper, East Carbon, and you guys? I've seen Jake at one of our city council meetings but I haven't seen anybody there on a regular basis. And I don't see our helper representatives coming here on a regular basis. So when things come up, I just think there's a problem. And as I read through this document, I'm looking, and it's like it had a lot of errors in it. And I don't know who did the fact checking on it, but it was talking about Carbon County is part of the Colorado Plateau, which is true. But one of the awesome things about Carbon County is where the Great Basin Plateau meets the Colorado Plateau. So you actually have two different land masses that meet here. And then you also have the Book Cliffs that extend for almost 200 miles into Colorado, and that's like the longest landform of that type in the planet. And it's not mentioned in that part of the when they were talking about that. But I think one of the things that bothered me the most about your document, you know, and I'm assuming that it's communicating to the world what we are in Helper, was the only thing where females were listed in that entire document. It listed them in the early 1900s as prostitutes, which I'm sure you knew.
Yeah. Now, Michelle, just really fast, I mean, on here, the agenda item that we have listed for the conversation just talks about you presenting to us ideas on how to better communicate with our constituents.
So let me finish up on
okay.
that. So
I was just making sure we're heading that direction.
We're heading that way. So, you know, using this document and this information, I would talk to some people, and number one, they had no idea about this document. Number two, like the thing about the only thing that women were listed in that entire document with an occupation was as a prostitute. And people were like, well, you know, in the early 1900s, when they had the miners' strike, they had all these women, wives, mothers, community women that were helping the miners survive through the mining strike. And also, Helper, as we all know, has a very rich history with prostitution. And so the fact that this document is talking about, yeah, we moved them out of price, and I'm thinking, well, yeah, they just came to Helper. So as far as like what could be done, so as a communications person in Helper for, getting the word out, we use a multi-pronged approach. We don't just say, okay, we need to put something in the Sun Advocate and we need to put something in the legal notices because that's what's required. We don't do what's the minimum required. We do what is necessary to get our community involved. And that's, I think, one of the main reasons that Helper is doing all the wonderful things we're doing right now is because we communicate by email. We put posters up. We get on the phone and call. We do mailings. So, because we don't have, we do have the Sun Advocate, we do have the radio, but we don't depend on that, and we put things in places like at the senior citizens. There's people, a big chunk of people that use the senior citizens, and there's a lot of conversation that goes on there about what's going on in the county, the good, the bad, people's opinions. And so my thing is, if you are sincerely interested in wanting to know what the people think, what the people want in this county, and I'm not a registered with either Republicans or Democrats, I think like you need to move the politics out and focus on what it is you want. So if you wanted your document, if you really wanted community input on your document, you would have had, like with the irrigation, like we have water shares. I never heard anything about, nobody asked my opinion about irrigation. Nobody asked my opinion as a business owner. Nobody asked my opinion, with tourism, this or that or the other. Either through email, through a phone call, through the newspaper, nothing. And to find the document, I had to text Jake at night because I couldn't find it. I was looking under .gov. Well, it wasn't a .gov document. It was something else. So I think you need to be careful about how you present things. The one good thing I think you guys did, so for whatever reason, apparently there's something going on with antennas, because we got this card in the mail this week and it's like, fill out the survey. And it's like, oh, okay, we will do that. So apparently that was important enough that you were doing things to get the word out in multiple ways. So I hope you take this to heart and you do things, you know, a little bit differently and get more of your community involved. You know, get your elected officials, you know, get some communication with them. You know, I don't expect you to go to every, you know, city council meeting in the county, but I expect like maybe to get representatives there and get some feedback going back and forth so that you know what we're thinking.
You know, Michelle, we have recognized that we could do better on the whole communication thing with the community. So much so that as our previous commission secretary relocated to Salt Lake City, one of the requirements that we focused heavily on in a new individual for that position was that they had some PR experience. And we now have Rita as our new commission secretary. She has
Great.
experience with the radio station, with the community. A lot of people in the community know her and know who she is. And as you've experienced already through our IT department with Barry Horsley, as far as free TV being in danger and everything else with all those antennas usage being sold. Anyway, the communication on that, with a few of the more recent things, hopefully you can see that we're trying to head in that direction, and hopefully you can expect to see more communication from us for future projects. But we do appreciate you coming and letting us know that we can do better to get our word out there.
Sure.
And just to kind of add on to that, we are doing other things. That specific survey about the resource management plan was sent out through Facebook and asked to be spread as far and wide because we saw that people weren't filling out the survey. So we tried to get it out through Facebook, through word of mouth. I told a lot of people, and I'll bet a lot of them didn't even fill it out, even though I begged them to fill it out. Please talk to your friends, have everybody you can fill out these resource management plans. I talked to everybody that I knew and asked them, or not everybody, I talked to a lot of people and asked them to fill these out. But at
you know
some
what?
point,
Like, we should have had a conversation. I'm the communication person for Helper Revitalization. We get, like I said, we get a lot of community stuff going. So if I had known that from you, you'd have had a lot more, at least from the helper end of things.
And it goes both directions.
And
I
it does go
understand,
both
because,
directions.
I
That's
mean,
why I'm here.
You've been here multiple times, and this is the first time that I've known that you were the communication person.
Right.
So thank you for informing us of that.
Absolutely.
The other thing is, Michelle, is that I think that our citizens need to become much more engaged, not only from an information standpoint, but where they go to look at it. The resource management plan was passed by the legislature 2 years ago, mandated that they be done. It's been done by a professional firm as far as a planning group goes, because every county in the state had to do one. So it's not just an initiative, on our part. So in the process of hiring that group, an RFP went out. We appointed that group to do that. It might help you to know that the writer of that was a woman, and that she put that all together with the help of her group and presented it. We held multiple open houses. We've advertised it, as I said, on Facebook, on our website, and even in the newspapers, which everybody doesn't read the newspapers. But anyway, I'm not trying to defend us in any way, but I am encouraging every one of us as citizens. A lot of times the processes we get caught in start on the state level. And yeah, we could have spent another, I don't know how much it cost to mail out the little cards. And we probably could have looked at that, trying to get it one more time. But anyway, we'll do better, Michelle, and thank you very much.
I think you might want to look at Helper's model, because when we had the SSTAT people come in a couple weeks ago, they were really praising us for all the volunteers that had gotten together and how we communicated and got things done. Because we would say, here's the goal. Okay, how are we going to do it? Yeah. And one last thing, speaking of things you don't know, there is a person here in Carbon County that is the VA Volunteer of the Year. That's all of Utah, parts of Idaho, Wyoming, and Nevada. So, kudos to that person. And I think we need to really step up and work on our communication so that we can.
Michelle, would you share your contact information with Rita so that she has it?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And the other thing that we're doing, that just to try and be more in the public, is when you turn around and smile for
Because we're on YouTube.
we're on
We're on
YouTube.
YouTube, yeah.
And Facebook.
And we're streaming, and we're trying to get more people. And I've had comments of, hey, I watched your commission meeting, appreciate this or that, or I have concerns about that. So we are getting a little more presence, a little.
But we're open to ideas.
We're
so
a
we
great
appreciate
source
it,
for
yes.
insomnia, to cure insomnia. People can fall asleep to us faster than.
There you go.
Thank you.
All right, well,
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay. Item number 6 on the agenda, we have consideration and possible approval of an agreement with the Family Place regarding the purchase of data software. And we have this wonderful lady from the CJC here to speak to us.
Sorry, Shelley couldn't be here today. She's in Texas at training, so she gets to be having fun. I'm Holly Huntington, and I am the Family Support Nursery Coordinator. The database that we're looking at would be such an immense help to us. I don't know how many of you have been down there to the center, but our packets are so big that the families have to fill out, and then we have to go through and enter everything in to the computer by hand, but also our contracts with the state and all of our grants require certain information from us, and so we have to create all of these different forms and collect all the information by hand and then get it all turned in. And it's a monthly thing that some of them are monthly, some are quarterly, but it's a long process. And I know personally I spend a lot of hours in the office doing that and can't help out where I'm needed in the nursery. So
basically, we'll be taking the client filling out this much paperwork to you instead of doing other things, doing data entry in a computer and taking up a lot of extra time that you could be spent doing other things. And this software, is there a funding source for it?
we have our TANF funds that would cover the whole
Take care of it
9
all.
yards there. Also, it would help parents in booking in their children. I was really impressed with this database system because they can get on and look and see where there's openings and book their kids in, and they sign in and sign out there, so it's an exact time. We don't have any mess ups and trying to find, well, it looks like they said 5 o'clock. I can't tell as I'm trying to put it into the computer, and it's 3-4 days later before I can get to it. And I'm like, I don't remember what time it really was. So it really will be helpful in that way.
We'll appreciate the information, Holly. Commissioners, do you have any more questions for Holly?
I don't.
Yeah, it's a one-time payment, but I didn't see anything other than that it can be terminated by Starfish with 30 days notice. Anyway, so that's one question as far as length of contract, and it seems very, very open-ended, and I don't know what that means as far as the software continuing to run on our system. I don't know if Barry's familiar with it, because obviously we provide the backup and the data for that. The other question that I have is based on our purchasing, I believe, well, maybe it doesn't fall under our purchase, but I was going to ask if there had been an RFQ or an RFP process that had gone for this software.
No, there has been no process for this. My thought is in talking to Shelley, she told me these are the only guys that have developed this kind of software, and that this is the only software out there that does this, is my understanding. Is
Yes.
that right?
It's the only one we have been able to find.
And they provided documentation as a sole source provider. And the
That's-
software was developed specifically for CJCs in the state of Utah.
And that's fine, and we may not have the technology or the IT knowledge of it, but we'd certainly do our best to help, but can't guarantee that we'll service it either. So I'd make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Holly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 7 on the agenda, we have the review and possible approval of the Carbon County Information and Technology Policy. Barry Horsley. So Barry, are you going to do 50 years too?
Well, no. Although if I have to work here till I get Social Security, I'll have over 40, so we'll see how it goes.
Impressive all the same, yes.
So before you have a slightly revised IT policy, the items that were changed in it was to address some definitions in bullet point 1.
What page, Barry?
Page 2. And let me back up just a bit. That we just went through a IT security audit because of the criminal information systems that we access through multiple departments in the county. We went underneath a audit that's the parent agency is the FBI, and so they distribute this through the states to do an audit on everybody who accesses the information. So there was a few clarification items that we needed to address, nothing that was a black eye on us, just some things we need to tighten up the belt on. But some bullet points in number 1 for definitions of kind of what IT systems are and what we service. Also on page 4.
Just a minute. So point out exactly what the change is. That's what I'm interested in, is how it changed from the previous version.
So this paragraph was I don't have the old version with me, but this describes what is covered underneath this policy as far as computer networks, electronic mail systems, servers. As far as reviewing anything on the computer, it has to be for county business, nothing for personal usage. Anyone using the system agrees to be monitored as such, and so it allows us to perform audits on users that they can.
So I think that's an addition, right? That's
Correct.
A new part that system personnel may provide evidence of their monitoring to law enforcement for disciplinary action or possibly criminal prosecution.
Correct.
Okay, thanks for that part.
Along with that goes with state law that any professional IT person that works on computer system has an obligation to report any illegal activity that they find on anything. On page 4, number 13, it addresses also circumventing any security measures by employees, whether it be they intentionally block security cameras, open up secure areas of doors, things of that nature. So it allows.
And I think that's an important one, especially in this day and age. So that's a good add to that.
Correct. And then one other thing that was included, I lost my bookmark. There's a section in there that specifically addresses building security. This had been absent from the policy. It describes building security of how one obtains proper security to the buildings. That is to be administered by the IT, and proper channels in allowing the rights of the access. In this, thank you. Yes. Also, in any incident of loss of a key, there's actions to notify our department immediately so that we can take the proper course of action to secure the areas. And just further down the road, you'll also see some additional policies as we're working with HR to define the proper action of hiring and terminating employees, so that we get the proper access that they need. In the security world, the best practice is the lowest possible security is for which they're required to do their job. And so we want to get them the right access to do their job, but also on the same note, upon leaving the county, we want to make sure that that's revoked immediately, whether it be on good terms or otherwise.
Can I go back to building security, unless somebody has another question? So it says, for a key to be entered, the key and individual's name must be submitted to IT with a description of the access needed. This submission must be done by either the benefits administrator or the supervisor. So is this saying that IT is the one that approves locks and access to different areas?
Not so much approves, but
that's how I read it, though.
I would say distributes a better term.
So I think there ought to be some clarification, though, as to who has the right to, for example, different people at times have asked for access to the commissioner's hallway, or to different department areas. I wonder if we ought to clarify in there who grants that access.
Great.
In addition to saying who gives out the key.
No, I think that's a great idea. For instance, take the sheriff, for example. If Commissioner Miller was to come and ask me to say, can I have access to the jail? The answer would be, let's talk to the sheriff and get that proper approval. So I think the department head who administers that area should give that authority. And then we in turn, as kind of the second checks and balances of it, enable and disable that. So we can clarify that.
And I don't know, commissioners, if you feel like that's something that ought to be clarified in here, or if that's clear enough otherwise already.
No, I feel it should be.
I like that clarification.
Yeah, Rose brings up a point. We've got a form that we've developed, and we're kind of refining it as we go, but basically upon being hired, Rose submits that to the department head to request not only physical but computer access of what layers of that security the employee is going to need. So it's at that point that the department head can decide what they have access to. But yeah, we can further define that in the policy.
The other one that comes up from time to time is access by type of key. And we may want to address that too, if we're clarifying that. Like, can I have a physical metal key versus a fob? Can I have access to this door, which isn't a normal door? Whether we take that through the department or those kind of special requests maybe need to come through this commission as the administrative body.
Okay, we can include that as well.
I think that would be wise.
Are there any other changes you want me to address?
Commissioners, I have a question on 1.1.2, page 13. This is when reviewing and clearing email accounts prior to deleting the specific message emails shall print the email message including any attachments and save the hard copy of the file. Is that for all emails, or are you specifically
Give me that bullet number one more time.
1.1.2, about midway down, it says, when reviewing and clearing email accounts, but prior to deleting any specific message, employees shall, not giving any leniency here, print the message, including any attachments, and save a hard copy to the appropriate file. Are we talking about specific ones, or are we talking about every email that I get?
No. So what that is to address is an email system is not designed as a filing cabinet for permanent archive. And so if you deem it such as an important document, you need to get it out of the email system into its proper storage.
Okay. I'm just curious when I read that.
Right.
Barry, we appreciate the information. Did you want to go over this other disposal policy?
I don't believe that reached the agenda.
Okay.
Well, what I'll do is we can bring the disposal one back and the revised version of this and we can address those at the same time.
That'd be great.
All
I guess
right.
the only other thing, the part about wiping, so on, this is my personal device, if it becomes stolen or lost, the wiping of those, is that new to this policy
No.
as well?
No,
Was
it's
that
not.
the old
It was a new.
Mhm. That's existing. I think I've signed it every time I get a new device. Yeah. Well, appreciate it, Barry. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, and so we'll table decision on that till we receive the other draft and approve it at that time. If
Or are we making a decision on this and then making a separate decision on the disposal policy?
I guess we do have the possibility of making an approval based on those adjustments that we mentioned.
If you want to do that, I think you
We
could.
need to have a revised.
It's up to you. If you'd like to see the added language before you approve it, we just bring it
I'd
back.
like to see the language on that.
Let's go ahead and table it then, if I'll entertain a motion to do so.
Motion to table.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion and a second. Item will be tabled till our next commission meeting. I believe that's sufficient time for Barry to put that all together. Item number 8, review and possible approval of 2017-2018 bookmobile contract with the Utah State Library Division. That's probably a Seth Ovison item, right?
I'm the one that had it put on. So the amounts on this are about $1,000 more than what they were last year. I believe it was $98,000 last year. This is the contribution that the county pays for the bookmobile services throughout the entire county. The county doesn't have a library system specifically, but the county is the entity that pays for the bookmobile, which takes, it goes out to, South County, it goes out to East Carbon, it goes to Helper. Right now it's housed with the Helper Library. It's a good benefit to them, provides them with more resources from the state, and then it goes around to visits all the schools, and it provides, accessible reading for the kids and anybody else in the community during the year. The contract for this year is $99,800, which would be the county's contribution, and that's goes from July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2018 is the contract period.
Commissioners, what are your thoughts on the bookmobile contract? I know that, with all the other budgeting items, this is one more thing to spend our money on, and obviously we want people in our county to have books available so they can read and everything else.
Yeah. So budgeting wise, we budgeted the $100,000, which would take us through the end of this year. This contract would carry us through until halfway through next year. So it would require you for the 2018 budget to budget at least $45,000 or $50,000 for 2018 for bookmobile services. If the question is where to be budgeted, half of it's budgeted in this calendar year, half would be in the next. So it will require budgeting for the next cycle.
I have some of the same reservations, I guess, spending $100,000. But I also don't know how many people use bookmobile, how often or what volume of people use that, or if we can reduce the amount of, what our options are. Is it all or nothing, or can we say maybe less times a year? 99,000, $100,000 goes a long ways. That's more than just one employee.
Commissioner Potter, what are your thoughts?
What are your thoughts?
Well, I kind of ran over them already, just mentioning that, hey, we're looking at making perhaps several different cuts in the near future going forward because we're still spending $2 million or so more dollars than we have revenue for. So we have to make cuts in all kinds of places that are going to be somewhat painful and somewhat less than desirable. Is this going to be one of those places? Or, are we going to be looking at other avenues?
I think the real question is, we want literacy to be important. I've worked in some of the school projects her school programs that provide reading to kids that are behind. But I don't know that the bookmobile really fulfills that requirement simply because of the number of stops they do make. It's a very expensive program with limited books, limited exposure, especially where every school has a library. We have a public library. We are able to download, read online, which the statistics are staggering about the number of homes and kids that have devices that they can do that. And so in my opinion, I don't know that we can afford it any longer and would make a motion that we do not renew the contract.
We have a motion to not renew the contract.
I mean, I don't know. I'm in favor of not renewing it, but I would like to see how many are affected before we do that. I don't know if the bookmobile tracks the number of users.
They track users, and they track, they do track the users, and they track the number of books that have been checked out.
Do you have that information?
Last year, when they did it for last year, we requested that, and I think I can look for it, see if it's in my emails. But
And I guess one of the other questions that I have is why is the county the only entity, if this is providing services for East Carbon, for Helper, for other communities, and for the school, why are we the only entity that's paying into this program?
That's a very good point.
We talked with the school district last year when this came up, and in talking with the school district at that time, the response that we got was that they felt like their local school library systems were sufficient for their students' needs. And yes, the bookmobile goes, and when school's in session, they get a chance to check out books from the bookmobile as a supplement to those library systems. But they felt like the books that they had were sufficient for their needs, and they weren't interested in participating financially.
Well, I'll go ahead and step down as chair so that I can second that motion to non-renew the use of the bookmobile here in our area, the contract. Hopefully, at a future date, we can enter into more conversations with those other benefiting parties here in the county and hopefully bring that back. But at the current time, I don't believe that we have funding and revenue sufficient to justify its use. And that's my reason for stepping down and seconding that motion.
So you need to call for a vote now.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 We have 3 ayes, unanimous vote. It's a sad vote. Item number 9 on the agenda, we have review and possible approval of Carbon County tax sale and sale of other county property held on May 18th, 2017. Seth Ovison.
Can I back you up on the bookmobile contract? Is that included in there? Would you like us to, the agreement has the terms that the agreement may be terminated with cause 90 days prior. Do we then have to send them a notice that we're going to terminate? The one that we're currently running off of expires June 30th. Do we still have to send them a notice? I will still communicate with them anyway, but do we have to send a more legal notice to them saying we're going to terminate the contract June 30th?
Well, I think we should. Whether we have to or not, we ought to pull that up and look at it and let them know. I think in writing that we're not going to.
Okay, then I'll work with you to get that one.
Okay.
Taken care of. Sorry, I want to do it right.
That's a good point. Sure.
Okay, so tax sale. Sorry.
Now moving on, number 9, tax sale.
Okay, Commissioners, in your packets, there's a list of parcels. The Carbon County tax sale was held May 26th, it's not May 26th. That's my typo. It was held on May 18th, 2017. Give me the right year. Yeah. It's been one of those days, sorry. May 18th, 2017. Parcels that were sold, there were 6 parcels that were sold at the tax sale. One parcel, which is not the real property, just the personal property, the building that was sitting on it on BLM land was struck to the county, or will be stricken to the county. All proceeds from that have been collected by the county. Everyone paid for the parcels that they bought. The excess funds will be remitted to the state unclaimed property tax division. The taxes to the county treasurer to be remitted to the different taxing entities for the delinquent taxes, and then the administration fee. It's on page 2, and that is the tax sale. State statute requires that the sale is ratified by the county legislative body after the protest period. If there's a 10-day protest period after the sale, that is passed. We have not received any written protests from the sale, and my recommendation would be to approve the proceedings of the tax sale.
Do you want to address the other properties that we didn't receive anything on?
Also, from the county tax sale, there were a list of other properties that were owned by the county that the county deemed that they were not in the county's plan to be used, parcels that had either been stricken to the county in prior years or for whatever reason the county had, all on improved land. There were several that didn't receive any bids. Those will remain as parcels of the county. They can be put on for sale at a future date. There were several that did receive bids on. All of those were paid for. The biggest group of ones that didn't receive any bids were empty lots in Wellington, which kind of surprised me. I thought they looked pretty good, but maybe somebody else knew something about them that I didn't. But those are all on the last page of that report in your packet. All of the proceeds from those sales will go to Carbon County. It doesn't go to, none of that has to be remitted to the state. So, and there were 10 parcels which were sold. In your packet, as well as was a letter after the tax sale was over. A gentleman had requested, he said he got caught up in the sale and he wanted to bid on one of the parcels, but it was so exciting he got lost track of where he was at and he didn't bid on one. He actually called on Monday and said that in the letter he said he would like to buy that additional parcel for the same asking price, but he has, on Monday this week, he called and said he was no longer interested in that. So
Okay. Motion to approve or ratify the tax sale?
We have a motion
I'll second that.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Seth. Item number 10, we have adoption of the proposed URS contribution rates. Again, Seth.
So commissioners, in your packet is you go with the state's fiscal year, July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2018. Utah Retirement System contribution rates. These rates are set by the state. The county does not have the option to opt out of the Utah Retirement System. That's a short way of saying it needs to be approved by the county legislative body, and you don't get any say in what they are. That's state statute. The only contribution rates that changed was for Fund 111, which is the Tier 2 hybrid for public employees, and the Tier 2 hybrid for public safety. Several years ago when they created the Tier 2 system, they gave the option for employees to have the pension plan and the extra contributed to a 401k in their name, with the stipulation that if the funding necessary for the pension increased, the amount for the 401k would decrease, and that is what's happened this year. So the amount going to the fund for the pension has gone up a little bit. The funding that those employees will receive, the percentage that they'll receive each month into their 401k has decreased. Any employee that opts into that plan is also on the hook that if the funding for the pension plan goes past what was set originally, it will become a contributory plan. That's not the case yet, but it changed about 0.2%, which is not a lot. But that's the change for this year. No other funds have changes in the contribution rates.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. That's almost more of an acknowledgement, or yes, we will abide by these numbers type of an approval.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, we have item number 11 on the agenda. Consideration and possible approval of a resolution authorizing cross appeals of decisions of the Utah State Tax Commission with respect to centrally assessed property.
Commissioners, I put together this resolution, which is a sample resolution based off a sample resolution UAC gave us. So far, we have these 6 entities who have appealed their centrally assessed taxes. I've listed all of the ones that, as far as we're aware of to this point, that who have property in Carbon County that might be affected by their appeal, in order now to file a cross appeal or to oppose them. Well, basically, if we want to be heard for the State Tax Commission, we need to file a cross appeal on some of these. I've listed Pacific Core, Mid-America Pipeline, AT&T Communications, AT&T Mobility, Level 3 Communications, and Verizon Wireless are all ones that have appealed and seem to appeal every year. We don't necessarily need to file cross appeals on all of these, but I thought it best to include them all so we have that option. Julie and I will be looking at those numbers along with UAC and possibly our appeals attorney, Tom Peters, to decide which of these we specifically want to cross appeal. This resolution is just to preserve our option to appeal against all of them in the case we think it's necessary and beneficial to do so. But we have to do it within 30 days of the time that they've set their appeal, and you have to authorize it within that time period. Anything to add to that, Julie?
They mentioned the UAC, if you could just also include and others as they arise.
Okay.
To leave it open-ended, yeah.
So I'll need to modify that, but
Add a number 7 to that.
that's right.
So,
And others as they arise, yeah.
just for the
Yes.
public's information, I think it's important to note that what we're talking about is as these Pacific Corp and AT&T and these different companies bite their taxes down, we as homeowners pay an increased cost to make up the difference so that we can have a level budget as a county or as a city or whatever the entity might be. We're talking about $7.19 to homeowners and $13.07 per $150,000. That would be an increase to your property taxes, if I'm correct in saying this. So for a $150,000 home, you would be paying an increase of $7.19, and for a business that was $150,000 in value, you'd be paying an increase of $13.07. Not that the county would receive any more money, or the city would receive any more money, or Pri-White, or whatever the entity would be, but because they're paying less taxes, we as homeowners and businesses would be paying more. That's why it's so important that we have the opportunity to cross appeal and try and fight for the other taxpayers in our community.
Very good. So every year, as Christian mentioned, these bigger players, they try to appeal to pay less. When they pay less, each one of us has to pay a little bit more. So obviously that increases our burden.
And that appeal is on a state level. That's not something we even get a say in until the cross appeal. So I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now this enables us to be a part of the picture.
Commissioners, I noticed Mr. Bingham's here on the Basin Industries item that came up as agenda item number 4. Can we recall that item now before we adjourn the meeting?
I'll make a motion to recall.
Second that.
Does it need a motion?
Great, that's good enough.
So Christian, in recalling the item, are we just going to review it for a second time?
Yes, I just think we ought to inform Mr. Bingham of the decision that was made. He made a special trip here to be here, and so just wanted to have a chance to let him know. And then if he has questions, give him a chance to ask questions on that.
Very good. Mr. Bingham, the motion was made by Commissioner Potter and seconded by Commissioner Hopes to allow a conditional use permit subject to those 15 line items with slight alteration on 2 of them, which would allow you to continue without relocating your scales as long as you implement a transportation plan. Christian, would you explain the transportation plan a little bit further?
I guess what we'd like to see from Basin is for you to provide a proposal to us that you will abide by, that will prevent trucks from stacking up on the actual traveled part, on the travel way, on the pavement, on the road.
The asphalt.
The asphalt. In other words, we'd like to see how you propose to keep trucks from stacking up there on the road, and then a plan with respect to trucks, how trucks will that leave the scales, kind of a safety plan as to how they're going to do that safely, whether that might include installing some lights near the scales so that oncoming traffic is aware that they're coming onto the road, putting a flagger out, something to that effect. If you could present something to us in writing within the next 90 days that the commissioners could look at and approve. And so that's that part of it. The second thing that we've asked to put into the conditional use permit is an acknowledgement that we continue to claim that those scales and the fenced area are in the road right-of-way, but we will not ask you to remove those or to change where they're located unless and until a need for that to take place happens, either because of more development back there, which increases the traffic flow, or some other unforeseen reason at this time. So in other words, we still continue to assert that those scales are in the right-of-way, that the fence is in the right-of-way. We will not ask you to move that at this time unless it becomes a necessity later on. So if you'd like to speak to that or have questions to that, I think you would entertain that for a minute. But otherwise, wanted to let you know that the conditional use permit was approved subject to those conditions and the conditions that were previously brought up at the last meeting.
I think you explained it very well, and that was my proposal. One of the things was we have a flagger for the trucks to exit.
Just be sure to put that down in writing and submit it as your plan within the next 90 days.
We worked on some of the 15, and now that I know that's approved, we'll go ahead and work on some of the others as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Motion to adjourn.
We'll move on to departmental reports. We have a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned.
Always a pleasure.
Enjoy.
Yeah, I figured it was bumping up against that.
So Sheriff Wood.